All right, folks, we want to take a few minutes and talk about what we need to know to take the state exam. So I'm going to teach you some test taking strategies that are really going to help you out when you go to take the state exam for time management purposes. I think about this state exam like a fight, right? So when those guys walk into a boxing ring or a octagon, right, they've been prepared to fight that specific opponent, right? They know what their strengths are and weaknesses are. So there's some problems we need to be careful of on this exam that'll really get us in trouble. There are no tricks on the exam, but there are some rules we really need to follow to be sure we're prepared to take the state exam, we don't run out of time, we answer the questions in the proper order, and go from there, okay? So first thing I want to teach you, we're going to talk about just some basic rules of any time you take a state exam or any exam. You want to be sure you don't second guess yourself, right? So what that means is if you went through the exam the first time, by the way, I'm going to teach you to go through the exam multiple times during the time allotted for the exam. That way you go through, you answer everything you know, then you go back and look up the low-hanging fruit. I'll teach what that is, and then we'll go back and dig those hard questions out toward the end. But as you go through there the first time, we're going to teach you to guess, mark, flag, and then go to the next question, right? So the exam used to be mark, now they're flagging the questions for later review. So we'll teach how to do that as well toward the end of this presentation, how to guess on that question, how to mark that question for later review, and then how to go back and modify that question, right? So anyway, so first time through the exam, we want to be sure that we answer every single question, right? So we're going to go through this exam. We're going to take the entire test in 45 minutes or less. We are going to answer every single question, and we're going to flag for later review no more than half the questions plus 10. Right, so whatever your questions you're taking, if you're taking a 100 question test, you can flag up to 50 of those plus 10 more, be 60. If you're taking a 120 question exam, you can flag 60 plus 10 be 70, right? So whatever the length of your exam is, we don't want you to flag more than half plus 10. The reason that's a rule we follow because if you flag more than that, you're going to end up running out of time. Okay? So what happens is we want to look up questions to be sure, but in reality, we are 80% sure of the answer. So we need to learn to let those questions we're 80% sure go away. That way we have the time to spend, instead of confirming those we're 80% sure about, we have that time to look up the ones we're 5 or 10 or 15% sure about. That's where the real value is with going back looking these questions up, okay? So first time through the exam, 45 minutes or less, answer every single question. If there's a question you didn't know the answer to, you flag that question for later review. Again, I'll show you how to do that here shortly. And then you go to the next question, right? So again, you should take this test quickly because you either know the answer or you don't, you know the answer or you don't, you know the answer or you don't, right? That quickly should be how fast you go through this exam. The answers you know from class. Never answer a question for what you know from the field. We'll talk about that as well. This exam is not written from a trade aspect, it's written from a book aspect. So I want to be sure we're going to the book to find the answers. So anything learned in class, you can answer that on the question first time through. Don't flag those, the questions you remember the answers to, or the questions you know from the book aspect, and then flag the ones you don't know or that you had to guess on, and then go back and look those up, right? So again, first time through the exam, 45 minutes or less. You can't flag more than half plus 10 or you'll run out of time. You're going to answer every single question first time through the exam, okay? I talk to folks all the time who have taken these exams and had troubles passing them, and I always ask them 3 questions whenever I start talking to them. If they say they're unsuccessful passing the exam, first thing I ask them is, why? What happened, right? Stuff happens. Got in an accident that morning. I wasn't feeling well. I was under the weather. I got in an argument with my spouse, whatever. So our brain's in a wrong place. I tell them, shake it off, go back and take the test, you'll be fine. If they say everything was fine, question number 2, how long did it take you to get through the exam the first time? We just talked about the answer should be what? 45 minutes or less, right? And most of the time, we never get past those first 2 questions before we figure out why somebody failed the exam. So a lot of times those folks will say, well, wait, it took me an hour and a half or 2 hours to get through the exam the first time. That's way too long. What that means is they got into the books and started looking these questions up too early and ended up running out of time, okay? And if they say, I don't know, everything felt good, 45 minutes or less, just like you said, question number 3, how many questions did you have marked? And that answer should have been however long your test is, half of those questions, plus 10 more, that's your maximum. We allow you to mark, again, that's a rule we follow, that way you don't run out of time. Usually between those 3 questions, we can find out why someone was unsuccessful in passing the exam. What that does for us is it helps us know where they made the mistake so they can go back and fix that the next time through. I've talked to thousands of people over the years who said, you know what, if I follow those rules, I think I can go back and take this test. Right? I've had people, hundreds at least of people who have told me that, you know what, I broke your rules and it caused me to fail the exam, right? And again, I want to be sure you understand this is not a control thing on my part. This is no pride or arrogance here. We just know what works. We've been licensing people for over 30 years and we know what works on this exam. So please, please, please follow these rules, okay? So again, first time through the exam, 45 minutes or less, answer everything you know, flag anything you don't know, should be able to go through this exam and not flag more than half plus 10, 45 minutes or less, right? Answer every single question. Again, that means if I have no idea, I'm going to take a bald, blind, out of the blue guess. I never leave a question blank. A blank answer is always wrong, right? So we don't leave any questions blank. That way, if we don't get a chance to get back, even if we flagged it, if we don't get a chance to get back to it, at least we have a guess there where at least we got a 25% chance of getting that question right on a four-choice, multiple choice exam, okay? So again, let's go through the exam the first time. Whatever we answer, when we go back that second time through, after we've taken the test, the entire test, 45 minutes less, answered everything, marked no more than half plus 10. When we go looking those questions up, if we see a question that we cannot find an answer to in the books, but we guessed, leave it alone unless you can find the answer. So if you guessed A, leave it A. If you guessed C, leave it C. Don't change it if you can't find it. Oftentimes our first guess is usually correct, right? So don't change it unless you can find it. Then, again, we're going to go through the entire exam and go back and look up the questions we could not answer. We'll show you shortly how to pull up those flagged questions, show you how to flag them, show you how to pull them up. Take your time when you go to take the exam. Now, what I mean by that is don't freak out, don't panic. If you feel yourself stressing out, just stop and take a break, right? That only took a couple of seconds, but as you can tell, the rate I'm talking slowed down, the volume I'm talking came down a little bit, right? I'm not talking as fast. So anyway, I'm calmer just for that 1 or 2 second break there. So, I tell people, look at the ceiling and count the ceiling tiles or count how many light fixtures are in the room. Those have nothing to do with the exam, but that helps you disconnect from what you're doing. Okay, we'll talk more about that shortly. So get to the test location early so you don't have to worry about being late. Right? If we show up at the test site late or we get stuck in traffic, our brain is just running a million miles an hour, and then we pull in the parking lot, run inside to take the test, and we sit down, our brain is still running, right? So we want to be sitting in the parking lot 15 minutes before the doors open or before we're supposed to be there. That way, if something happens, right, we've got 15-minute budget, and depending on where you live, if you're driving across Dallas or Houston, you may want to give yourself an extra 30 minutes or an hour to get to that location. But again, we want to sit in the vehicle and calm ourselves, not be stressed out, not be in a hurry trying to be there. We want to be there waiting for our time to start the exam. Don't worry about the speed of the others around you. Some people are taking different exams than you. So if somebody finishes up, if you sit down to take your exam and 30 minutes later somebody gets up and walks out, don't judge yourself by them. They might be taking a 30-question test or a short exam. They might be taking these testing companies test multiple different trades, barber and cosmetology and insurance and real estate, and they may be taking a different exam from you. So don't gauge your time on them. If somebody else leaves, you should sit there and think, you know what, I hope they passed, but if for whatever reason they didn't, right, I'm going to stay here and focus on my exam and do what I need to do. Don't get worried when you see some questions on the exam that you don't know. There will always be questions on the exam that we do not cover in these classes. That's why we teach you how to use the tools, how to access the data out of the code books and out of the reference books. That way, when you see questions on the exam, not if, but when you see questions on the exam we did not cover or prepare you for, now you know how to use the tools to find the answer in those books. So again, don't panic on those. Again, those would be something you'd want to flag, right? Come back to later. Don't leave the test location. So if you start your exam and you take a break, then however long you sit there taking that break, your clock is still ticking on that test. So there's no way to pause the clock on the exam. Once your exam starts, right, it'll run till it's done. No breaks, no pauses. So if you step out, you need to go to the restroom, whatever, then your clock is still running. So if you do step out, don't leave the test location, right? Stay there, that way you don't worry about getting lost or turned around or stuck in traffic or whatever else, okay? Again, take a small break if you feel like you're losing it. Losing it means I feel like I don't know anything anymore. I ran out of questions I know. I have no idea. I feel lost. I'm panicked. Again, count the ceiling tiles, count the light fixtures. Do something that's totally separate from what you've been focused on. That way, it'll kind of help you disconnect from this mentally. Take a break, refocus on the exam, and go again. Ease up on the caffeine before the exam. Probably want to start the night before because caffeine stays in our system for a period. So eat a good breakfast when you get up. I'm not a big breakfast guy, but I want to eat something. That way I don't sit down to take this exam. I'm putting this presentation together for multiple states and multiple exams. Some of these exams are short 2-hour exams. Some of these exams are 6-hour tests, 5-hour exams. So anyway, we want to be prepared to be able to sit in that chair that long and our stomach's not start grumbling, 2 hours into this process. So, and eat a good breakfast. Don't sugar up, don't caffeine up. Again, eat something. Fruits and grains are proven to stimulate brain activity. Some of us need all the help we can get, right? So it can't hurt, all right? So eat a good breakfast before the exam. When you go to take the exam, we teach a theory we call guess, flag, next. What that means is if I don't know the answer, I'm going to guess. We talked about this before. A bald, blind, out of the blue guess is better than leaving the question blank because a blank answer is always wrong. So we're going to go through the 4 choices. The whole test is multiple choice. We're going to pick which one we think is the best. If we know it from class, we're going to answer it. We're going to go to the next question. If we don't know it from class or know it from the book, then we're going to guess an answer. We're going to flag it for later review, and then we're going to go to the next question. Okay? So I want to teach you another theory that I use when I take exams. I call it picking fruit, right? So think about the exam being this fruit tree, an apple tree, for example. We want every stinking apple off the tree, but we want those apples in order. So if you've taken a class from me, we've spent the past day or 2 or 3 shaking the tree, getting as much fruit on the ground as possible. So what we want to do is we want to walk through that exam and answer everything we know from the code, from the references that we might have learned in class. And then that's that first pass through. Answer everything you know from class. Remember the rule, never answer a question from what you know from the field because the exam is not written from a field aspect. So answer everything you know from class. Guess and flag the other questions. And then the second time through the exam, that's when we're going to go a little bit, we're looking for now the low-hanging fruit, right? That's the fruit that's still on the tree, but I know right where that is. I know where that's at in the book. I know where that's at. I know that's a table. I know how to find that answer. Start picking that low-hanging fruit, and we're going to work our way consistently up the tree, but I want the apple off the very top of the tree. I want them all. But that very top apple, I want it last. I want you to be sure you don't trample the fruit on the ground, right? Answer that stuff the first time through, then look for your low-hanging fruit, work your way up. There's no sense in blowing our brains out trying to get that apple off the top if there's all these other apples we haven't made it to yet, right? So we want a good fight plan. That when we walk in there, we're systematically taking this exam, okay? So first time through the exam, we're going to pick up off the ground all the stuff we know from class. Second time, low-hanging fruit. Third time through the exam. Fourth time through the exam. Till we run out of time, we're going to keep going up that tree, picking that next level of more difficult fruit, as it were, the harder questions as we go. All right, so now we're going to walk through how to take the exam. Okay, so what you see in front of you is an example of what the screen's going to look like when you go to PSI to actually take the exam. So you notice across the top, this says page 1 of 81. That means question 1 of 81 questions in this example. Tools at the top will pull up a calculator or pull up an illustration. The keyboard shortcuts at the top, that'll show you could push a certain button on the keyboard that might pull up a calculator, or if you wanted to see the illustration again or whatever. And then we've got our question. We've got 4 choices. Across the top, we've got flag and comment. I very strongly urge you stay away from the comment. Don't make comments on these questions. And the reason I tell you that is some of us, I don't think this question should be on the exam. I've been in the industry for 47 years. Dude, TikTok, you're killing yourself on the clock here. Okay. However long you spend writing that essay of why you don't think this is a fair question, that's eating up test time. Okay. So try to stay away from the comments. So across the top, we're going to read the question. We either know the answer or we don't, right? So I'm going to go through this twice, right? I want you to time me as I go through this. You ready? What do the stars on the United States of America's flag represent? I don't know. Presidents, colonies, states, wars. I'm going to guess one, colonies. I'm going to flag it for review there at the top, and I'm going to go to the next question. Do you agree that took me somewhere between 7 and 10 seconds to answer these questions? I want you to notice I didn't read it in a hurry. I read it slow and clear. I knew exactly what the question was asking me. That time, we're going to assume I did not know the answer, so I guessed, I flagged it, and I went to the next question. Okay? Let's do that again. But we're going to assume I know the answer this time, right? So what do the stars on the United States of America's flag represent? I know they represent the states. Presidents, no. Colonies, no. States, yes. Wars, no. Notice I still read all 4 choices. I'm going to pick states, and I'm going to just click next. That brings up the next question. Notice I did not flag it this time because I don't want to see this question again because I knew the answer to it. Okay? So, as we go through here, remember we're going to take the exam the first time through. We're going to answer every single question. We're going to flag no more than half plus 10, and we're going to do that in 45 minutes or less. Right? Those things are the things that are going to get you in trouble if you break the rules on them. Right? First time through the exam, answer every single question, 45 minutes or less. Flag no more than half the test plus 10. Right? So, now, again, on your screen, you've got a question. What do the stars on the United States of America's flag represent? Let's assume I don't know the answer again. Presidents, colonies, states, wars, I don't know. So I'm just going to guess one. Remember, when you guess, one is not a better guess than the other guess if you're guessing. Just guess one and move on, right? So I've had people over the years say, wait, if you don't know the answer, how do you guess? Okay, watch closely. I'm going to teach you how to guess. Right? Everybody got that? That's how you guess on this test, right? If you don't know, just pick one. It doesn't matter. So we're going to guess. In this case, I'm going to guess colonies. I don't know. One guess is no better than the other. I'm going to go to the top of the screen and click on the flag symbol. When I click on that, that question is now flagged for later review. Okay? Then I'm going to go to the next question. After I've gone through the entire exam, answered every single question, flagged the questions I didn't know the answer to from class, then second time through the exam, I'm going to go to what they call the hamburger menu up in the top right, those little 3 lines. I'm going to click on that where it says index. And when I click on that, it's going to pull up an option of how to filter these questions. So I'm going to click on the filter button, and it's going to pull up all the questions. Remember, we do not want to change a question unless we find a different answer in the book. So the answers we knew first time through the exam, leave them alone. Okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to click on that filter bar. It's going to drop down a menu, and we're going to click on the flagged. That way we only pull up the flagged questions. So if you look at the illustration, we're looking at, it gives me an option to look at all 81 of the questions in this case, just the 3 that I have flagged. The answered, I've got 81 out of those flagged, and then unanswered would be 0, right? So I'm going to click on the flagged questions. It's going to pull up just, in this case, just the 3 that are flagged. I'm going to click on that question number 1 there, item number 1, and when I do, it'll pull that question up on the left-hand side of my screen. The screen is gray, so when I go to the bottom of the screen and click Edit, that's when the screen will change colors. When the screen changes colors to white, now that means I can edit it. So now I'm going to go up, I looked in the book, I found my answer, the answer was states. I go edit, I click on the states button, and then watch. I'm going to go to the top of the screen and I'm going to click on the bottom of the screen, I'm going to click the answer button. That'll save my answer. And then I'm going to go to the top of the screen and click the flag button again to unflag it. It's very important that we unflag these questions because after you've gone through this exam the second time, you're going to do everything exactly the same. You're going to go back to filter by, flagged questions, pull up just the flagged questions, and work through the questions that are still flagged. So consider it like whittling. We're just whittling these questions down one at a time, okay? So be sure you unflag it. That way you don't get to this question later and say, well, was it states or was it colonies? Did I fix it or do I need to fix it? Okay? So as you find the answers, unflag it. When you get to the end of the exam, the testing company will not care whether the question is flagged or not. Okay? So if you run out of time and you guessed an answer and it's still flagged, if you guessed correctly, you get credit. If you guessed wrong, then it's wrong. Okay? So don't worry about They'll stay flagged until you unflag them, but you need to be sure you unflag them. That way you don't waste time having to go back and confirm something that you've already looked up. Okay? If you have any questions about how to take this exam, I strongly encourage you to pause this video, back up 30 seconds or a minute, a couple of minutes, however long it is, and watch this thing again. Be sure you know how to take this exam. Okay? How to take the test, how to modify the questions. We've had people struggle. The whole reason we put this thing together for you is we've had people struggle, get frustrated because they said, I pulled up a flagged question and I tried to change it, but it wouldn't let me change it, or it wouldn't record my changes. So again, very important to know how to take this test. 3 simple rules. Never answer a question for what you know from the field when you're sitting down to take the exam. Remember, the exam is not a trade-related exam. It's 100% a book test. Never answer a question for what you know from the field. I'll give you about 90% certainty if you answer a question from field knowledge. 90% of the time you'll be wrong, especially as it pertains to these code questions on the exams. Because remember, the code is the minimum standard allowed, not a good standard, not what we do in the field every day. The worst we're allowed. Okay? So never answer a question for what you know from the field. Second rule, don't outthink the question. Right? What that means is, as smart as you guys are, you've seen 1,000 different things, and so you might say, well, it could be this or it could be that. Don't overthink the question. Something you need to know about the people who wrote the exam is not only are they not tradespeople, they're professional test writers, but that means they have to go to the book to find the questions and the answers. But one more thing that makes this even better for us is every question on the exam must be defendable, which means the answer has to be in the book, or the formula to do a calculation or whatever has to be in the book. Otherwise, the answer or question is not defendable. Most of these questions are black and white right out of a reference book somewhere. So don't overthink it, because you may know more about it than the person who wrote the exam. So don't overthink the question. Take it at face value, right? What's the minimum thickness of a concrete floor slab supported directly on the ground? They're asking a basic question. We don't care what seismic zone it's in. We don't care what the load-bearing value or the compressive value. We don't care what kind of fiber or mesh we have in there. We don't care what kind of structure we're building on it, right? So just answer the question based on what the book says, right? What may cause the unit to short cycle, right? Modern refrigeration says that vibration of the thermostat may cause unit to short cycle. Uniform Mechanical Code says the minimum size of a condensate drain line should not be less than 3/4 of an inch. So forget what you've installed. That's what the book says. That's the answer. Okay? So go to your reference books, plumbing code, mechanical code, building code, electrical code. This is true of any of the exams you're taking. So this is the formatting of how to take the exam, and this question, don't outthink the question, is important for all of those. Okay? Now, we've already talked about this once. We want to read all 4 choices and pick the best answer. What makes the best answer the best answer? That's the one that the book says is correct. You may have your opinion, I may have my opinion, but the book is only going to say one of those. On these exams you're taking, there are no all of the above, none of the above, both A and B, neither A nor B. There's none of those. They're always looking for one answer on each one of these questions on the exam. So again, that's the fair way to write the exam. So if you noticed, I've told you several times, this exam is not trade related. So if I were you sitting there thinking, I've been in this industry for 20 or 30 years and now my industry knowledge is not going to help me on the exam, that would be very frustrating for me. But you need to take a breath, because in the 30 plus years I've been doing this, I will tell you, I believe this is the most fair way to write an exam. Because if they did get 100 professionals in a room and ask them these questions, it's very likely people would have different opinions. But if those 100 people went to the same reference book you have, they're all going to answer it exactly the same way. So again, this is a test about your ability to access data out of reference material, okay? So know how to take the exam. Don't outthink the questions, right? Be sure you read all 4 choices. Pick the best answer. The best answer is the best answer because it's what the book said so, okay? So again, if you have any questions about any of this, I would encourage you, if you have any doubt at all, you should watch this video again. I guarantee you this video will make 10 or 15 point difference on your exam. Just knowing how to take the test, knowing how to manage your time, knowing to not flag too many questions, right? Those kinds of things. I guarantee you, just watching this video alone, you're guaranteed to do 10 or 15 at least points better on the exam, okay? So again, we think about this as a fight. We're walking into a battle. We need to be sure we understand. We need to be sure we have our armor on. We need to be sure what steps we're supposed to take. So again, this is vitally important.